Hello and welcome to another NGen Math 7 lesson by eMathInstruction. My name is Kirk Weiler and today we're going to be doing Unit 7, Lesson 7. Unit 7? How about Unit 1? All right, let's really fast forward. Unit 1, Lesson 7 on Introduction to the Calculator. Now, one of the great things about Math 7 and Math 8, and really all of your courses moving forward, is that you're going to be using calculators to do a lot of the sort of routine calculation that you've learned over the years, which begs the question of how much did you really need to learn it, but let's leave that for other people and other places, right? One thing though you definitely have to do is you have to get comfortable with using what's known as a scientific calculator. Now the whole idea was back in the early 1970s, there were just sort of 4 function calculators. All they would do is add, subtract, multiply, and divide, and then they created calculators for scientists. In high school, you're going to be using graphing calculators, which can graph lines and all sorts of different things. But in this course, and in Math 8, you're primarily going to be using what are known as scientific calculators. So that's what we're going to be working with and just kind of getting used to it. Further lessons will use these calculators extensively, so make sure that you have one whenever there's a lesson that needs a calculator in it. Speaking of which, let's get right into it in exercise number 1. Now, up at the top, right before the 1970s, etc., I kind of went through all of that, right? These scientific calculators, and there are tons of them out on the market. If you have a smartphone, you probably have one that came on the smartphone. There are lots of apps that you can download for scientific calculators, but as you probably know, especially on things like state exams, you typically can't use your phone, right? So most scientific calculators kind of look like this mocked up picture here, right? And it's got all of your, alphanumeric keypads, things like your 4 functions, as well as a lot of other stuff. Now the one that I'm going to be using isn't this one because it's just a picture and there's nothing I can do with a picture. But what I like using is what's known as the TI-30X. Okay, this is a very common calculator. It's got lots of great stuff on it, and we're going to use this a lot today to do calculations. Okay, so let's kind of get right into it. In exercise number 1, let me kind of move this out of the way so it's not blocking the text. Let's see what we're going to do, just some basic calculations. Exercise 1. Use the basic operations of addition, subtraction, and multiplication, no division yet, to evaluate each of the following. All right, so letter A, we have an addition problem. Letter B, we have a subtraction problem. Letter C, we have a multiplication problem. So this is simple enough, right? It's really just button pushing, and hopefully that's not too much of a problem for you. Let me just do letter A, and then you can do letter B and letter C, and then we'll kind of take a look at what the answers are there. So this is simple enough, right? I'm going to just bring my TI calculator right over here. I want 1,457 plus 2,895. Now notice I'm not actually using any commas anywhere, and now I'm going to hit the enter button. Some calculators have enter buttons, some calculators have equal buttons, things like that. This particular sum ended up being 4,352. So quite simple, right? Nothing really all that hard about that. Why don't you go ahead and use the scientific calculator to do this difference and this product. All right, it's all button pushing, but let's make sure we can push the right buttons. Let's do it. Here we go. 20,000. I'm going to hit the clear button on my calculator just so I don't have to see my last calculation. 20,172 minus 17,356. Enter. Gives me 2,816. Awesome. Let me do that product really quick. Coming over here, I'm going to hit the clear button again. You don't have to do that every time, but 89 times 254. Notice that time symbol is kind of more of a star, or almost looks like a video game character. You'll get used to it. Hit enter, and I get 22,606. Of course, there are many advantages to doing calculations on a calculator. One of the advantages is that it's much faster. The other advantage is, as long as you're typing the right buttons and pushing the right things, the answer is pretty much guaranteed to be the right calculation. There's no real room for error other than pressing buttons. All right, but you could make mistakes pressing buttons. That happens all the time, right? Let's keep going and getting more work with the graphing calculator. All right, here we go. Let me move this out of the way. Now, division on the graphing calculator. There's nothing hard about division on the graphing calculator, but something I wanted to point out, sorry, not graphing calculator, scientific calculator. There's something that I wanted to point out in case it happens on your calculator. But first, let's consider an extremely easy division problem in exercise number 2. Consider the division problem 40 divided by 5. Letter A simply asks, what is the quotient? Do this without your calculator. And letter B says enter it into your calculator to verify. All right, well, this is simple enough. Let's do it together. 40 divided by 5, I think we're all pretty comfortable with the fact that that's 8. Now I bring my TI calculator up here. I'm going to clear out my last calculation. Let's do 40 divided by 8. Sorry, I didn't want that. I wanted 40 divided by 5. 40 divided by 5, enter, and I also get 8. Now, the thing I wanted to point out, which isn't actually the case with this type of a calculator, I'm going to make this a little bit larger, right? That isn't the case with this calculator is that sometimes the division symbol on calculators is actually written as a fraction bar, right? And we should feel comfortable with the fact that fractions actually do represent division. Now again, this calculator uses a division symbol, as do many of them. What you'll definitely find is at the high school level, almost all graphing calculators, which is what you use in Algebra 1 and above, almost all of them, when you hit that division sign, it comes up as a fraction bar. So what you would see is not 40 divided by, but you'd see 40 with a fraction bar and then an 8, right? And you should feel comfortable with that. This idea that, oh yeah, fractions, decimals, division, right, all kind of go together. Let's keep working and seeing what our calculator can do for us. What can it do for you? All right, well, one of the great things about most scientific calculators is they know and they obey the order of operations, right? Remember, order of operations say, okay, you got to do exponents first, then multiplication, things in parentheses first, then exponents, then multiplication and division, then addition and subtraction. All right, so let's take a look at exercise number 3, all right, and kind of go through that particular problem and see where we can get on it. So exercise number 3. Consider the expression 7 times the quantity of 15 minus 6 plus 4 times 5 minus 1. Letter A asks us to evaluate this expression by hand, showing the various steps. So let's do this one together. Okay, so everyone together, let's do this. So if I'm going to rewrite the expression right now, 7 times 15 minus 6 plus 4 times 5 minus 1. So order of operations tells me, okay, I got to do the 15 minus 6 first. That's going to give me 9. I'll leave that in parentheses with the 7 outside. Then I've got that 4 times 5 minus 1. Now, order of operations would say, okay, now I have to do the 7 times 9 and the 4 times 5 next. Let me give myself a little more room there. So that's going to be 63 plus 20 minus 1. And now it just says, order of operations says, okay, do your addition and subtraction from left to right. 63 plus 20 is 83 minus 1 gives me a final result of 82. All right, great. But watch how easily and quickly the calculator does the same thing. I am literally going to put this calculation into the calculator exactly the way it's originally written. So let's do that to verify our answer. All right, here we go. We're going to clear that out. I'm going to do 7 parentheses. I'm not going to even have the multiplication sign there. I'm just going to do 7 parentheses 15 minus 6 parentheses plus 4 times 5 minus 1. And then I'm going to hit enter and I'm going to get 82. Look at that. Awesome. So that 82 just verifies what we got when we did the calculation by hand. Again, what's great great about calculators is that they know order of operations. And because they have parentheses on them and all the other various kind of operations, we can very easily use them to calculate the result of a longer expression like that. One side note, we haven't done any work yet this year with signed numbers, numbers that are both positive and negative. All right, one thing that you should watch out for on the calculator is that there is a negative button down here. It looks like a parentheses with a subtraction and another parentheses. That is used for when we want to designate a number as being negative. And it shouldn't be confused with the subtraction button because honestly, they're not the same thing and the calculator will treat them very, very differently. All right, let's keep going. Do some more work with the calculator. Here we are, messy math on the calculator. You bet, right? So where the calculator should be really helpful for us isn't something like 7 times 5. Things like that, we should just know, oh yeah, 7 times 5 is 35, right? But where the calculator is particularly powerful is when we have messy math to do, especially involving things like decimals and fractions. So let's take a look at exercise 4 and see what we can do with the calculator. Find each of the following products using your calculator. All right, those are pretty simple directions. Let's do letter A together, right? Let me bring over the calculator. And what we've got is we're going to have 9.5 times 13.7. Hit enter, and we're going to have 130.15. Now again, think about how difficult, or not difficult, but at least time-consuming that would be if we were doing it by hand, right? We'd have to do 137 times 95, right? We would get an answer, we'd have to count up how many decimal places we have, we'd have to move the decimal, etc. Here, it's as simple as typing and getting a result. What I'd like you to do is pause the video now and figure out the answers to letter B and letter C, and then we'll move on. All right, let's do it. Bring in my calculator over. We've got 0.025 times 258. Enter. 6.45, so hopefully you got 6.45. And actually, let me bring this over here. Let's clear it out. Let's now do 3.14 times 6.95. Enter. And lots of decimals on this one, 21.823. All right. And again, that would be really messy, right? Because I've got 2 decimals here, 2 decimals here, right? So I get a very, very messy answer. All right. Messy math on the calculator. The calculator makes it easier, makes it more accurate, etc. Let's do a little more. Evaluating exponents using the calculator. Haven't done a lot of exponent work this year, but the simple idea, right, is that exponents indicate repeated multiplication by a base. All right? So exercise number 3. For each of the following, evaluate without using your calculator and then verify with your calculator. All right, so let's do this. Together, let's do letter A and C without the calculator, and then have you do B and D without the calculator, and then we'll see how we can use the calculator to actually find the answers, okay? So letter A, 3 raised to an exponent of 2. What this literally means is 3 times 3. Remember, we call this squaring. 3 squared, and 3 times 3 is obviously 9. Now, on the other hand, 5 to the third, right? This is 5 times 5 times 5. So we would have to do that by hand by saying, well, I've got 5 times 5, which is 25. Then I'd have to multiply 25 by 5, which is 125. So 5 to the third, also known as cubing a number, 5 to the third is 125. Now again, without using your calculator at all, right, I'd like you to do 7 squared, or 7 to the second, and 2 to the 4th. Pause the video now, and then we'll use the calculator to see how we can do it on that as well. All right, well, simple enough. 7 to the 2nd, also known as 7 squared, is 7 times 7, and that's equal to 49. All right. And then we have 2 to the 4th. This one I need some room on. That's 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. We can do this in many different ways. We can say, well, 2 times 2 is 4. This 2 times 2 is also 4. And then 4 times 4 is 16. So how do we do these then on the calculator? Well, you might say to yourself, well, this is simple. I mean, I'll take my calculator and I'll do 3 times 3, or 7 times 7, or 5 times 5 times 5, or 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. And that totally works. That totally and completely and utterly works. All right. It would be a real pain if I had something like 2 to the 10th, because then I'd have to do 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, etc. Your calculator, thankfully, has 2 buttons that will help us out on this. One button it has is a button specifically reserved for problems like A and B, where we're squaring a number, raising a number to the 2nd power, or just multiplying that number by itself. All right, so let's take a look at that. Let me clear this out. Oh my goodness, excuse me. That was loud. So the squaring button actually is right here on the calculator. It's a little bit hard for you to see it because I can't actually circle it on the calculator, but it's right down there. So if I want to do 3 to the 2nd power, this is all I have to do. I just type in 3, I hit that squaring button. Notice how it kind of looks like 32, but it's really like a 2 that's a little bit smaller. I hit enter, and I get a result of 9, right? Do this. Find the squaring button on your calculator right now and verify that 7 to the 2nd power is 49. All right, simple enough. We already know where the squaring button is on our calculator. 7 squared, enter, and there's our 49. Great. Now, raising a number to the 2nd power is extremely common in math. It happens all the time, which is why there's a special button devoted to it. But when we raise a number to any other exponent, let's say 5 to the 3rd or 2 to the 4th, we use what's known as the caret button. It's spelled a little bit different than C-A-R-R-O-T, but let's not even worry about it. It's a little button that looks like this. All right. And this little button, which is right above the squaring button on this calculator, this little button literally means raise to this power. So let's take a look at 5 to the 3rd together. All right, if I want to do 5 to the 3rd on my calculator, I put in, I'm going to hit clear, hopefully, clear, there we go. I'm going to hit 5, do that caret button to the 3rd, enter, and there's my 125. All right, see if you can find that caret button, right? This button on your calculator so that you can verify that 2 to the 4th is 16. All right, let's do one more. We've got 2 raised to the 4th, enter, 16. Awesome, right? So we want to be able to raise numbers to various powers, and we're going to be doing that quite a bit in this course. So learning out where this button is and where the squaring button is, very, very important. All right, let's do a little bit more with the calculator. One more problem. Converting fractions to their decimal form. So in our last lesson, we literally looked at how we could use long division to change a fraction into its decimal form. Let's review that process in exercise 6, letter A. Consider the fraction 2/3. Convert this fraction to its decimal form by using long division. Use a repeating decimal bar where needed. All right. Why don't you go ahead and do this? Don't use your calculator, just use long division to convert 2/3 into its decimal form, and it will repeat, not terminate. All right, well remember, 2/3 is the same as 2 divided by 3. So I'm going to do 2 divided by 3. I'm going to put a little 0.0 here. 2 goes into 20 6 times for 18. Then I'm going to subtract. 20 minus 18 is 2. I'm going to drop another 0 down. 3 goes into 20 6 times, 18. And I've already got that repetition going on. So literally, 2/3 is the same as 0.6 repeated. Now, this is where the calculator, the scientific calculator, is absolutely phenomenal, because I can now do that conversion on my calculator, right? I can just do this, 2 divided by 3. Enter. Now, one of the really weird things about this is that when we look, we get 0.666666666666667. There's a 7 at the end of it all, right? And that's this kind of final part, right? Let me just write all of these down. 6, 6, 6. How many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then a 7. Why is that last digit a 7? I thought this went on forever. Well, the plain fact is the calculator can't show you all those 6s going on forever because there's a finite amount of the screen. So what it always does to the last digit in any repeating decimal is it rounds it. Now, I mean, think about it, right? Then that would be a 6, but the number after that would also be a 6, and so it would bump that 6 up to a 7. So it rounds the last 6 it can fit up, right? Again, the last 6 it could fit would be right there, but the digit afterwards is also a 6, so it would bump that up to a 7. All right? It doesn't mean that 2/3 terminates after that many 6s with a 7. It just means that the calculator has kind of given it up. That's as far as it can go, right? And again, this is nice because it allows us to convert a fraction into a decimal very, very quickly and easily. All right, let's wrap this lesson up, right? A great lesson with technology that we're using, right? What we primarily wanted to do today was just get you starting to use a scientific calculator, right? You don't want to wait until the end of the school year and then finally get your hands on a piece of technology that can help you with a lot of the math that you do this year. All right, so make sure that you're getting lots of practice with the calculator that you're going to use, preferably the one that you're going to be using in class and on state tests. That's the one problem with the scientific calculators on your phone or online or whatever, is the fact that those you probably won't be able to use later on. All right, but we'll get lots of practice with a calculator going forward in this course. For now, I just want to thank you for joining me for another NGen Math 7 lesson by eMathInstruction. My name is Kirk Weiler, and until next time, keep thinking and keep solving problems.